A decade before the outbreak of the Clone Wars, Jedi Master Sifo Dyas, under the manipulation of the Sith, but also motivated by what he saw as the inevitable darkness that was coming to the galaxy, commissioned the Kaminoans to create a clone army that would ultimately fight on the side of the Republic and Jedi. For 10 years, the cloners of Kamino set out to creating an army consisting of millions of clones in complete secrecy, whereby not a single Jedi, senator, or Republic official knew that such an army was being produced. Of course, Sifo Dyas was ultimately killed by the Sith before he could directly inform anyone else of his actions, severing perhaps the easiest way in which someone within the galaxy would discover what he did. But even despite the fact that Sifo Dyas was killed, it seems almost impossible that such an extensive operation, whereby an entire army that would fight a galaxy-wide war, wouldn't be discovered and was able to stay hidden for roughly 10 years. In this video expose, I will explain how the clone army remained a secret from the entire galaxy, describing why not only the clones themselves, but also their equipment, vehicles, and funding was never traced back to Kamino and discovered by the galaxy. To understand the continued secrecy of the clone army, it's best to start with the planet of Kamino itself, as that's not just where the clones were grown, but also where they resided and trained prior to the Clone Wars. Numerous questions surround the planet and just how exactly the Kaminoans were able to succeed in maintaining the secrecy of their operation. For example, why didn't anyone notice the clone army on Kamino? If they were capable of creating such a massive army and had such a significant cloning capability, how wasn't the Republic keeping an eye on the planet and overseeing their operations in some regard? To answer these questions, let's take a look at the planet of Kamino. First, the planet was located at the very edge of known space. In fact, Kamino was located in a section of the galaxy known as Wild Space, a region that was actually outside and beyond the Outer Rim. Wild Space was the frontier of galactic society and separated those parts of the galaxy that were known and those that were unknown. Therefore, Kamino was located on the very outmost fringes of the known galaxy, far away from the watchful eye of the Galactic Republic located within the core. Given its galactic position, Kamino went unnoticed and undiscovered by any outside Republic agents until extremely late in galactic history. Although the Republic started discovering and charting the planets within the Outer Rim when it discovered the Polimian trade route 25,000 years before the Clone Wars, no off-worlders even knew the planet existed until about 21,000 years later, roughly 4,500 years before the Clone War. Therefore, to say the least, located so far from the hub of the Republic, Kamino was an afterthought, and was able to conduct its affairs within the remote territories of Wild Space. But still, given the fact that Kamino had the capability of cloning such a large army, or at least prior to the Clone Wars, could seemingly provide a service whereby they could potentially create a vast number of clones for any purpose, why weren't more eyes upon the planet and their cloning operations? Importantly, prior to roughly 54 BBY at the earliest, or a full 22 years before the clone army was commissioned by Sifo Dyas, the Kaminoans didn't have anywhere close to the required facilities to create a significant number of clones, let alone grow an army millions in number. Although the Kaminoans had taken cloning technology farther than any other species in the galaxy, they only provided their services to an extremely small number of wealthy individuals. It wasn't until Higo Damask, the public persona of Dark Lord of the Sith Darth Plagueis, began to develop a plan whereby the Sith could have the Kaminoans clone an army that could be utilized in a full-scale galaxy-wide conflict to turn galactic sentiments against the Republic and Jedi, that the Kaminoans were able to obtain the facilities for their cloning operations necessary to clone an entire army. In exchange for a clone army consisting of millions of clones, Plagueis was willing to provide whatever funding was required to expand the cloning facilities on Kamino. This would be done through his clandestine financial group called Damask Holdings, which we'll discuss in more detail later in the video. It wasn't until Darth Plagueis' actions, roughly 30 years before the Clone War, that the Kaminoans had the ability to actually create enough clones to produce an entire army. Therefore, given their location outside of the galactic rim, that they only worked for a very small number of wealthy clients in regard to providing small orders of clones, and considering that no one in the galaxy outside of the Sith knew that Kamino actually had the capability to produce an entire army, there was no reason for anyone related to the Republic to keep an eye on the planet to ensure the facilities were not weaponized in the way that they ultimately were. Given these realities, the Kaminoans could undertake their cloning operations in secret, hidden within the fringes of known space, while maintaining their long-followed practice of focusing only on cloning and interacting with off-worlders as little as possible. It was the perfect recipe for allowing the clone army to remain completely hidden. But even if the conditions were perfect to keep the planet of Kamino and the actual cloning operations a secret from the galaxy, how was the clone army equipped and outfitted with their armor and vehicles, not to mention actually receive training upon them, without the rest of the galaxy recognizing the blatant buildup of military supplies? First, in regard to equipment such as armor utilized by the clones, this was provided to the clone troopers from corporations that were located directly upon Kamino. For example, Kaminoan Armorsmiths Limited, a company based on Kamino, both designed and manufactured the Phase 1 clone trooper armor that was used by the clones. Therefore, corporations such as Kaminoan Armorsmiths, as well as Kaminoan Weaponsmiths, ensured that equipment was provided to the clone army without a chance of anyone else in the galaxy discovering it, as it was all produced upon Kamino itself. However, when we start getting into the realm of larger military vehicles, the way in which these items were hidden and kept secret from the galaxy is much more complicated. For example, the clone army was already outfitted with hundreds of ATTE tanks, Acclamator-class assault ships, and low-altitude assault transports by the time the Clone Wars broke out at Geonosis. How were these vehicles produced for the clone army by the corporations of the galaxy without eventually being noticed by the galaxy at large? To meet this requirement, Rothana Heavy Engineering was the perfect company to fulfill the order, and as we'll see, it's no surprise that Darth Plagueis chose to work with Rothana to equip the clone army with military vehicles, a stipulation that the Kaminoans agreed to in exchange for Plagueis' funding. Rothana Heavy Engineering was a subsidiary of Kuat Drive Yards, one of the largest military shipbuilding corporations in the galaxy. Operating upon the planet of Rothana, the corporation became Kuat Drive Yards' primary subsidiary for the fulfillment of secret projects and orders that wanted to remain hidden from the galaxy. The subsidiary was perfect for fulfilling this role, as Rothana, like Kamino, was a significantly remote planet located within wild space, and again, isolated from the watchful eye of the Republic. But it wasn't just that Rothana's operations were located on the edges of the known galaxy. Rothana Heavy Engineering was able to keep the vast military vehicles that it was producing for the clone army a secret because Rothana went to great lengths to ensure that the vehicles it constructed were hidden and undisclosed to the rest of the galaxy. The only way to access the planet of Rothana was through a complex network of hyperlanes that were distributed to a few of the corporation's personnel on a need-to-know basis. Not even Kuat Drive Yards' own shipping vessels that were performing operations upon Rothana knew the true galactic location of the planet. Company ships destined for Rothana were made to jump to several points where they would download encrypted hyperspace coordinates and a transponder that would take them the rest of the way and deactivate the numerous mass shadow mines that were placed along the route to the planet. Therefore, the direct route to Rothana was a secret that Kuat firmly protected, and even if one were to find its location, the planet was protected by a powerful network of mines and a formidable corporate security starfleet. This fleet was tasked solely to protecting its secrecy from military threats, corporate spies, or any other entity looking to better understand the projects being constructed upon Rothana. But it wasn't just the construction of military vehicles that was a protected secret. Kuat and the Kaminoans also went to great efforts to hide the project from the galaxy at large during the transportation process that ensured Rothana's military vehicles could regularly travel to Kamino for training purposes. In addition to payment for the actual order of vehicles, Kuat Drive Yards also obtained an immense sum of money to create a newly designed hyperlane between the planets Rothana and Kamino, which came to be known as the Quiberon Line. This hyperlane allowed starships and other vehicles to travel back and forth for testing and training without jeopardizing the secrecy of the clone army. One final question, and perhaps the most significant one, must be addressed when understanding why no one discovered the clone army for an entire decade. How was all of this paid for without anyone catching on to the payments and tracing them to any of these projects, thereby revealing the existence of the clone army? From the clone troopers, to the military equipment and vehicles, to the creation of a new hyperspace lane, they required billions of credits, an immense amount that would seem to be difficult to keep hidden. The reason why the funding for the clone army was able to stay hidden was because the payments didn't come from a known public corporation or financial institution. Rather, the funding was made by Damask Holdings, owned and skillfully operated by Higo Damask, better known as the Sith Lord Darth Plagueis. Closely allied with the intergalactic banking clan, Damask Holdings was a private, clandestine financial group that was used by Plagueis to carry out secret and covert operations that would stay hidden from the galaxy. Through the financial group, which was also used as a lobbying and political pressure institution, the Sith not only had billions of credits at their disposal to pay the hefty initial price for the clone army, but they were able to do so in secret. Demonstrating just how secret the financial operations of Damask Holdings were, and explaining why no one could ever trace the payments made directly to Kamino or Rothana, the novel Darth Plagueis by James Luceno states that upon the death of the Sith Lord, it remained unknown to the wider galaxy what happened to the substantial financial holdings of Plagueis' financial group, as it was banking clan policy to never release the relevant information in this regard. Following Plagueis' death, payments were taken over by Palpatine himself, who expertly deployed his former master's vast assets in the payment of the clone army, ensuring that the secrecy of the project remained intact. So there we have it, how the clone army project was successfully kept hidden from the galaxy for a decade. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. Or perhaps follow us on Twitter at SW Reading Club for updates regarding the channel. Or support the channel through Patreon for access to exclusive hangouts and book discussions. If not for me... for no insiders ever questioning any of this.